Hello guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to find inverse of one-to-one functions. Now let's say we have a function like this, like f of x equals to x cubed plus 2. So in this case, for you to find the inverse of a function like this, first thing you have to do, you have to replace f of x by y. Okay, so now first thing to do, you replace f of x by y, and you'll have now, instead of f of x equals, you'll have y equals to x cubed plus 2. Okay, then after this you have to solve for x. Okay, in order for you to solve for x here, remember you had y equals to x cubed plus 2. So to solve for x, you gotta isolate x, right? So that means we'll subtract 2 from both sides. And if we subtract 2, we'll have y minus 2 equals to x cubed. Now to solve for x, we have to take the cube root of both sides. So it's like the cube root of y minus 2 equals to the cube root of x cubed, which will give you x equals to the cube root of y minus 2. Okay, so that's it here. This is how you solve for x. Now you interchange the variable, so you change y to x, y to x, and x to y. Okay, so you interchange them. That means you're gonna have instead the cube root of x minus 2 equals to y, and this is actually the inverse function that you needed. Okay, so inverse function, inverse of, so you replace the y by its inverse. Okay, this is pretty much the inverse because you just solve for y. So inverse of this function is then the cube root of x minus 2. Okay, so very easy for you to solve for. Okay, you just need, so a couple of steps. The first step here, you do you replace f of x by y. Second step, you solve for x, then you interchange the variable here as the third step. Okay, so this is how you find the inverse of a function, a one-to-one function. Now another thing, now this is how you find the inverse, but how do you check to see if a function is actually the inverse of another? Let's say you had two functions, and I'm going to take a quick example for you just to show you. So let's say you have two functions. Let's say you have two functions. You have, let's say, f of x. You have f of x equals to, let's say, x cubed. Let's take this example just to explain it. By the way, this is just to explain, to check to see if two functions are inverses of each other. So you have f of x and g of x equals to x to the 1/3. Now, how do you check to see if they actually, these two functions, so are f and g inverses of each other? Okay, so how do you check? Well, one thing to know is that if you for functions to be inverses of each other, one thing you gotta check is, as in this case here, is this. So f of f of g of x must be equal to g of f of x, and they both should be equal to x. So this is what you're checking. If this is true, therefore they're inverses of each other. Okay, so that means we need to calculate f of g of x, right? F of g of x would be, we go back to f, replace x by g of x. Okay, so remember it was cubed, so I'll replace x, this x here, and f by g, and g is x to the 1/3. Okay, x to the 1/3. Then this would be x to the 3/3, because you multiply the exponents here, right? Which will give you x to the first, which is just x. Okay, so this one is checked already. Let's check the other one. How about g of f of x? Well, g of f of x, you go to g, you're going to replace x by f, and f is this, f is x cubed. Same way, this will be x to the 3/3, which is x. So they're checked, therefore you would say yes, the two functions are actually inverses of each other. Okay, so this is how you check to see if they're inverses of each other. You just need to solve for f of g of x, okay, and g of f of x. So this is what to know really. F of g of x and g of f of x. Now, if the answer turns out to be x when you solve them, each one, f of g of x and g of f of x, if the answer turns out to be x, then you know that they're actually inverses of each other. All right? So I just showed you two things here. How to find the inverse of a function, of a one-to-one function, when the function is actually given to you. Okay? And how do you do that? Well, you first make a change. You change f of x to y, because f of x is basically y. Okay, so this is the first thing we did. Then you solve for x. Okay, just like I did previously. And then what do? You interchange x and y. All right, that's what you do. Then whatever you get for y is actually the inverse function. Then the second thing I just showed you is this one here, is how to check to see if two functions are actually inverses of each other. Well, if you solve for f of g of x and g of f of x, if the answer is x for both of them, then yes, the functions are actually inverses of each other. All right, thank you.